Hi, I'm Alison. Welcome to Dream Chasers Adventures in Happiness, where my band of superhero guests and I share with you tales of daring do, life-changing journeys towards living our best lives. If you're after an injection of inspiration and ideas to live the life that you want and deserve, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Hi there, and welcome to the show where we serve up conversation, ideas, and belief that it really is possible to identify and go after what you most desire from a career or lifestyle point of view. I'm your host, Alison O'Leary, and today I'm joined by a fabulous guest with a really fascinating story. Samantha Day spent 30 years working as a tax accountant in the City of London before making a career change that couldn't really be more polarised. In her early 50s, she embarked on a transition from accounting to stand-up comedy, turning a very new hobby into a real job that she earns a living from. Now, in the 4 years she's been at it, she's won numerous comedy awards, is regularly gigging around the country, and she's had 2 really successful runs at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Today, we're going to delve into how she's done it, both from a practical and psychological point of view. So welcome to the show, Samantha.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Hello. Thanks so much for coming on. We've got loads and loads of nuggets. I know it's going to be so useful to share with people.
Yes.
To kick things off, so you've done what I think most people would assume is completely impossible, making the kind of change that you've made. So can we start by getting you to talk a bit about how did you come to the decision to swap accounting for stand-up comedy?
Okay, so I guess I was quite senior, and I sound like I'm showing off, and I think it might be because I was quite senior, Alison. So by the time I left my job, I wasn't really doing that much accounting. You know what it's like, the better you are at something, the less you do of it.
The less you do it,
so they promoted me, and I was sort of head of tax for London and the South East, running this huge team and this huge budget, and I didn't really do... So the things that I joined the profession for, you know, I'm a bit of a math mo. I quite like maths. I love working out what motivates people, clients and team. So I had a really good time there. But what happens when you go up an organisation and you become senior? Politics happens, and you can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. You know, people go, I avoid all politics. Well, you don't.
No,
you don't. You may get left behind whilst you're avoiding it because other people are very much into it. So, it got to the point where I kind of thought, 30 years, quite a long time. And I am inside a bit of a show-off. And I'd used...
Love the honesty.
Well, I'd used every opportunity, because obviously when you are sort of in a reasonably senior position, you do get to do a bit of public speaking and showing off, a bit of leadership, all that. And I loved all that. And I loved it far more than any of the actual job. And that's a bit of a problem because people do eventually notice. And it got to the point where I just didn't fit in there anymore. And I just did this stand-up comedy course as a hobby to kind of relieve not the boredom exactly, but the sameness, I suppose, after 30 years. And the other thing was real life, of course, because when I was younger, I was a single mum. I had 3 children. And I was the breadwinner, and I didn't feel, that's not true, I didn't feel I had the freedom to choose a job which wouldn't necessarily pay for quite a while.
Yeah.
I wish I had. I wish I'd chosen something closer to what I'm doing now then, but I didn't. And when the last one left university, I just thought, I don't actually need to provide for others anymore, and I'm actually, as an individual, quite cheap to run. if you take out the Botox, which is very expensive, but put that to one side.
That to one side.
I'm quite cheap to run. So I thought, you know what, I'll try this hobby and I'll see where it goes. And actually, it was a matter of months, like less than 6 months, between that course and me throwing the towel in completely in the corporate world.
Wow. Okay, so that's amazing. So you took this up as a hobby to kind of relieve some of the quite boredom, but sameness of the job, and to step more into some of the things you actually really liked that technically weren't meant to be the major part of your job. So you start doing this course. What was it that drew you in, or like what was it that made you kind of go, this is the thing?
Well, so I told you, didn't I, that I did your course as a kind of double check after the original. Before I did the leap, I just thought, oh, let's just double check that you're not absolutely mental.
So you did my Work Wonderland online course.
I did Work Wonderland, yeah.
That, just for listeners, I have an online course that is a sort of mirror of the one-to-one coaching I do, that is designed to help people get really clear about what the right ideal career role path is. And I heard about you actually because somebody had booked a consultation call with me, and I always ask people how they've heard about me. And she started off her story by saying, well, I was in the park and I met a woman walking her dog. And I was like, okay. And she said, and we got talking, and I was telling her about how I just wasn't happy at work and I just really wanted to make change, didn't know what. And she told me about your online course. And then she told me your story, which is how we came to know one another.
Yeah.
But yes, so you took the course to just be doubly sure.
Yeah, because I didn't want to make a second false move. Not that accountancy was an entirely false move. It wasn't really, because it did provide what my children needed. But I think it was when I stepped off the stage of so what happens if you go on a comedy course, most of them are structured where you do sort of 6 weeks of learning the basics of how to write a joke and how to hold a microphone. And then if you want to, at the last week, you can take part in like a showcase, they call it. And you invite your friends, and they're very kind and nice and laugh at all of your jokes, no matter how shit they are. And I came off that stage and just thought, oh my God, I feel like a different person, because I'd always enjoyed like the stagey stuff, but it had been things like budget presentations and stuff, which I did manage to slide some jokes into under the radar. Of
course you did.
If I'm totally honest. Not some of them related to the rates of tax. So God knows there are people out there to whom I probably owe a lot of money. But anyway, most of them weren't about the technical detail. They were about other things. But yeah, I felt like I'd rinsed out every opportunity to kind of show off at work. And this felt like, oh my God, what if I could show off all the time and be paid for it? And actually, it's not just, I'm being flippant, because writing jokes and writing routines is really quite technical. It's not as far removed as you might imagine from something mathematical. There's a certain logic to it and structure. There are rules. And obviously, there's a huge amount of artistry as well, because it's the emotion and the physical embodiment of your act which brings it to life. But you still need some nice, strong writing underneath it. So that appealed to me as well, because I didn't really know that. Before I did the course, I sort of thought you were funny or you weren't funny. I thought it was kind of magic or something.
Oh, there's like come on, I suppose it would be. There's a kind of an underlying logic or kind of process to it, as well as the artistry that is layered on the top. So you were sort of drawing on skills from your old career in a very unusual, like in a way that I guess most people wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, I guess so. And also just being brave, because most of the time when I climbed the corporate ladder, I didn't really know how to do the next job. Or I'd take on a client that was a bit bigger than anything we'd worked on before, but I'd kind of go, how hard can it be? It's the same, only with a zero on the end. It'll be fine. And then afterwards, I'd panic and have to struggle to get myself together. But so I'd sort of been through that barrier of kind of, it's only humiliation, just give it a go. And I had humiliated myself loads of times at work as well. So I'd sort of crashed through that pain barrier.
So let's talk about this, because this is interesting, and I think this is a really important point. So I want to talk about bravery and courage, because obviously, it's one thing to know what it is you want to do, and it's entirely another to step into it And particularly when you consider what stand-up requires, that's like another level again. And we've talked about, you've got two perspectives around kind of courage and being brave that I think are really insightful, that people could really learn something from if they're thinking about making a change, you know, whether that's personally or professionally. So let's talk about those two things. I think one of them was around like beginner's mind, or like enjoying being totally rubbish at something.
Yeah.
Well, I'm paraphrasing. You tell us more.
Well, I just think that when you get into an established career that you've been doing a long time, obviously stuff comes along that's a bit tricky and hard to handle, but you kind of know from experience, however tricky and hard to handle it is, you'll sort of find a way through and it'll all be resolved fairly swiftly or fairly slowly, but you won't lose your mind over it, hopefully. Although I do know some auditors that lost their mind, and I don't blame them. That is a horrible place to be right now. But that aside, you know, I think the more you develop competency, the easier your life becomes, because things become less terrifying if you're familiar with them. The downside to that is, where's the adrenaline? Where's the fun? Where's the playful, childish you that went into that work because you thought it would be exciting?
Yeah.
So when I started stand-up, I just realised, oh my God, I'm like wildly incompetent. I really don't know what I'm doing. And also everyone's watching, because if you learn the violin,
of course, you can do
go
it quietly in the back room.
Yeah. You know, you can terrorise your neighbours with it. And then when you're ready, you can take it out into the public and do a recital. But stand up, you only know if it works if you've tested it in front of an audience. So you have to be incompetent in front of others all the time. And I actually was surprised how liberating it felt to go, do you know what? I'm the beginner in this room. I'm the new one. I'm the one that doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
Because I'd spent years going to other people, you know, don't worry, I've got your back. I've been doing this a long time. I will look after you.
Yeah.
And it's just nice not to have to.
I love this, because this is not what most people would think about, you know, because most people, I think, would think about how terrifying it would be, particularly when you've been in a role for a long time and, like you said, you are the expert and you know what you're doing and it's sort of water off a duck's back. The idea of stepping into something that is completely new, where you're going to be a total beginner and probably fail an awful lot, is like the worst idea in the world, I think, to most people. Like, we avoid it as human beings. Our brains are like, ooh, no, let's just not go there. But thinking about it that way, and how if you apply a sort of beginner's mind to it, like a childlike wonder, and you look for the curiosity and the entertainment and the interest and the joy in just trying new things and seeing it as an adventure, turns that totally on its head.
It does, and you kind of feel like, you know, when you see a kid experience a puddle for the first time and they're like splashing in it, and then they're splashing in it more because they can't quite believe that this water's jumping out of the pond into their boot. This is incredible. And it feels a bit like that. I
always think of it like, you know, like the first time I rode a bike down a hill, like with your legs flying out, and you're sort of like completely out of control, but you're just zooming down and hoping you're still in one piece at the end. Yeah. It's that kind of feeling. So you really latched onto that and kind of, okay. I think that's a really important point. So the other thing you mentioned earlier was this thing around humiliation. And I know there's a story to this. Tell us a bit more.
Well, humiliation, if you died of humiliation, Liz Truss wouldn't still be bothering us with her stuff, would she? So, I mean, you don't die of humiliation. Nobody does. And once you've sort of said, okay, well, that's pretty humiliating to get on a stage and have people not laugh when you're going, I think this is funny, and they're looking at you like, we don't. It is a bit humiliating, but it is just humiliation. Like, you can choose what you do with it. Like, you could, if you want, just kind of discard it and move on, which is a nice thing to be able to do. And because we all have shame about things we've messed up in the past, even if they haven't been public. But particularly if they have. And I think it means that we feel like, oh, I don't fancy any more shame. That didn't feel great. But if you change your mindset towards humiliation, I mean, the way it was put to me by a guy who I think he does still direct Michael McIntyre. His name is John Gordillo. He said to me, it's in preparation. So if before you go on stage, you should know your set. You've got the words, so don't worry about that. You've done that bit. Now it's to think, I'm going to really enjoy this. If this is a car crash, it's going to be the best car crash I've ever had. It's going to be the most fun of all car crashes. And that mindset of kind of, I've chosen this and now I'm going to bloody well enjoy it is a really valuable one because you can apply it to your life as well as your work.
Yeah. Again, fascinating perspective because most, I think, me included, go humiliation, want to run a million miles away from that. That does not feel good. But again, like you said, actually, it's part of it is, and no matter what it is people are making a change to, there's always going to be something. I mean, whether it's humiliation or it's failing in some shape or form or it's sort of stumbling over things, it's going to happen because that's life and you don't learn unless you get it wrong many times over usually. So to look at it and go, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all out and it'll be, like you said, a car crash of a show if it's going to be anything, and just try and engage with that and enjoy that as a...
Yeah, and I think most people, we don't like getting things, we don't like being wrong. Who likes being wrong? I know I don't. We don't like failing. We don't like being embarrassed. But if we avoid all of those things all of the time, then really the only things we can engage with are things we already know we can do.
Yeah. And then there is that whole lack of like wonder and curiosity and excitement that comes from stuff that
we've only got one life, haven't we? So to do the same thing for the entirety of it doesn't suit everyone. I kind of think of life in summers. I'm 55 now and I think, well, if I'm really lucky, I might have 30 more summers. I want them to be
awesome ones.
Great summers.
Yeah. Doing new stuff. I love it. Okay. So you knew you wanted to be a stand-up comedian and, you got some really kind of positive ways of dealing with the unknown, with failure and humiliation. Can you talk a little bit about how you got started? Like, did you have a plan? How did you step into a brand new career path that was a million miles away from what you had been doing? Like, where did you begin?
Well, I think when people make change, there's always a bit of so they're moving towards pleasure and away from pain, aren't they? So there's always a bit of push and a bit of pull, and there was for me. So there were things happening in my work, my existing work life, that just weren't good for me. And there were things about stand-up that I felt I should do before I die. They felt so much part of who I am that I should give it a proper go. But you're right. Once you've sort of decided that, you do need a bit of I did have a plan. I had quite a sort of structured plan, if you like. And one of the things I really liked about the end of the Work Wonderland thing was the bit at the end where you say, okay, so what's the first step and what do you do after that? So that it doesn't feel too big, because actually, if you decided, oh, well, I want to be the next Michael McIntyre, well, bloody hell, where do you start?
Feels like a mountain. Yeah, an impossible mountain to climb. Absolutely.
But if you think, well, I want to become someone who really understands how to write jokes, how to deliver comedy, how to keep an audience happy and entertained, and how to produce thoughtful art that's gonna that I'm going to be proud of, then that's seems like something that's actually more within your control.
Pretty achievable.
It's not about getting on telly or something that other person might keep the gate to. It's about becoming good at something using a process. So most comedians start with, as I did, going to open mic nights, which are pretty horrific to be
I can
honest with
imagine.
you. But, you know,
Not something I would personally want to do. Not least because I'm like the least funny person on earth. But anyway.
Well, no, I don't think you are, actually. I think I've already worked for her. But I think, although, you know, the open mics and the sort of low level comedy scene is tricky because it's, you know, tends to be in venues that aren't necessarily brilliant for comedy, with audiences that are a bit drunk or reluctant or whatever. Actually, it's also very low stakes for the exact same reason.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose so.
I did lots of that sort of thing and just wrote. I went on a few more courses because each of the comics that teach them has quite different perspective. And it's a bit like anything. You get loads of advice and you just take the bits that you believe
feel
are
right
actionable
for you.
Yeah. But most of it is just doing it. So stage time is pretty much everything because you just get better by doing.
Yeah. So you built it down. You did like a baby steps plan, and this you know, like, so because it is, again, it's within the course, but it's I do this with clients a lot, like the breaking down what feels like a mega goal into something really small that just feels doable. Because if you keep taking really tiny baby steps, you build momentum. Whereas if you think about the massive end goal, it tends to paralyze people, and then you don't take any steps at all, and then nothing happens. So you started taking steps, but then I know that not long after that, COVID hit.
Yeah, and COVID was really interesting because, well, what I did was, most comedians will tell you online gigs are horrific to do because of not getting much feedback. You know, you don't really know what's landing and what isn't. But actually for me, because I really lacked confidence in what I was doing, so I wasn't really selling my jokes, if you know what I mean. I wasn't really convicted when I was saying them.
Yeah.
And then COVID came and most people didn't do much at all for about a year or 18 months, something like that.
So it just sort of shut down.
Died.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because you couldn't get up on stage.
And, you know, all the theatres and venues shut down because even once they were open, social distancing made a lot of them, A, unviable financially, and B, not really a comedy vibe because comedy is all about collective enjoyment.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people just did nothing. I did a show every week of my own. It was called Live in the Time of Corona. I did it with two friends every week online, and actually we created this little community. It wasn't just comedy, it was poetry, music and other stuff as well. But I was the compere, and it made me write something new every week. We did 65 episodes, which tells you how long COVID lasted for, because just one a week. And actually that was really good for me, because then when we came out of COVID into actual real live people and audiences, it felt so easy. I can hear laughter. I am emboldened.
Amazing. So you literally, the comedy industry shut down, but you were like, no, I'm going to do something. You kick this off. You set off. Let's kick this off with some friends. Yeah, and just started. But so you were consistently writing new material every single week, and then getting to practice it. With no real idea about what was landing or not beyond. And who came to this? Like, did it start off, was it just like family and friends?
Started off, it was just family and friends. But then what tended to happen was people would hear about it because there were so few opportunities to play your music or whatever. People would hear about it. They'd ask to come and of course, every time someone new came on, some of their friends wanted to watch, and then they often would stay and watch the next and the next and the next. So we built up this community. I reckon it was about 60 people, and then each week there'd be sort of 30 to 40 actually in the audience.
Incredible.
Out of this pool of about 60. But after COVID finished, one of the poets in the group, who was one of the friends, it was his actual idea. I always say it was mine, but it was actually his. I won't say his name though, because that would be too much credit. He's called Carl. He actually got a book published just after it, and we all got together for his book launch. And it was really nice to meet many of these people for the first time, having just spent hours with them online and felt like I knew them. And like my mum and dad, who used to come on to watch me, felt like they knew some of these poets from Oxford. And it was really cool. It was really cool.
Good. Really good. So you really got to practice and learn your craft through the whole COVID period doing this. In as much as in as much as was possible.
Yeah, I don't want to come across like I believe I'm an expert now, because I'm not. I'm still learning loads. But yeah, I mean, I definitely was better at the end of COVID than the beginning, which was an achievement, I felt, in the context.
Absolutely. So then COVID finally ends, and so you start going back to, did you go back to the open mic thing? Were you sort of putting yourself up for gigs? I think you did competitions, didn't you? Like you started entering competitions.
Yeah, so my 7th gig was the semi-final of the Best New Act at the Bath Comedy Festival. So, yeah, I was really lucky. I did really well in competitions. I think because you tend to do a short set, 7 minutes or something.
Don't sell yourself short.
It was either that, Alison, or it was because I was the best. I don't know why it was. It might have been because I was the funniest. We don't know, do we? But I did well in these competitions. And, of course, then you do get a few people, would notice and give you a gig. And every gig is an advert for the next gig, really, because most comedians, like I do now, run nights or, help people book nights or talk to other comedians. So everyone is a sort of potential advocate.
Yeah.
And we all sort of help each other, because when you see a good act, I run a night now in Farringdon in Oxfordshire, and if I see a good act out on the circuit, I think, oh, thank God for that. That's another one I can bring to my gig. So people are genuinely interested to find funny comedians, because there's plenty of the other kind out there. Unfortunately, there's loads of brilliant ones as well. But you do get loads of people as well, like people who go, oh, my husband, he'd be an amazing stand-up comedian. He's so funny. And then you meet this guy and you think,
you're like,
okay, all right. So what I know now is that you love him very much.
Oh, brilliant. So how does it feel now? Doing this for a living and, making a living at it versus kind of where you were at? Like, what's the difference in how you feel?
Well, I actually was quite poorly. About once a year when I was an accountant, I would have to go to bed because I was so stressed. And I don't have to do that anymore, which is odd because you'd think this would be quite stressful, but it's not.
Because it's the right thing for you, doing something you love.
It's adrenaline.
Yeah.
But like on the... like on the X Factor, when they go to the contestants just before they're about to go on stage, they go, so how are you feeling? And the contestant goes, I'm so excited. And they're clearly shitting themselves. But the difference between excitement and nervousness is a cigarette paper, isn't it? It's all about mindset. And if you are excited rather than terrified, or if that's the narrative in your head, it doesn't make you ill, I've discovered. Whereas I actually was quite scared quite a lot of the time when I was in business, because you had to make X million of revenue every year to keep your job. I was a single parent, so that was quite important. And you had to go out and win it afresh every year. So even if you were good at sales, good at delivery,
you're only as good as your last sale.
Like it might just fall away magically. I don't know. I never felt safe. And then the politics of it, I never felt safe in an environment where. So that's the other thing about comedy, not as an art form but as a community. It's quite a straightforward community. People talk quite straight, because it's there's no reason not to, I guess. I think we tend to talk in a roundabout way when we feel we need to do that. But I never felt safe in the commercial world because I felt like I didn't quite know. And actually at the end of my career, when I really felt out of place, it was partly because I was in an environment where I didn't entirely feel that I knew what was going on around me, and it made me feel unsafe.
Yeah.
So
all of those things you're describing, it's and I experienced a lot of that myself in my old career in life. But a lot of the people that I work with have similar challenges, and it like me and you has an effect physically on them, on their bodies, because they're trying to manage the stress that comes from being in an environment that's not the right fit, or being in a role that's not the right fit. Just that misalignment causes problems physically. Which, it's, yeah.
And actually on the last but one of those crashes, I went to bed and I thought, well, we've been here before. What will happen now is you won't remember your own name and you can't eat and you can't do anything for 24 hours. And then you'll get out of bed, you'll go into work, you'll totally declutter your diary, you prioritise seeing friends and family, you'll start exercising, and you'll be fine for about a year till it happens again. But actually, that's not what happened. On the penultimate time, I went to bed, and 24 hours later, I still couldn't get out of bed.
Wow.
And on the last time it happened, I couldn't get on the train to go to work because I was so anxious.
Yeah.
And actually, even a year later, I used to get the Jubilee line out through London. I was going into London for something completely different, a gig or a friend thing or something, I can't remember. And I had to get on the Jubilee line. And all of a sudden, I felt quite PTSD'd up,
Yeah.
It was really quite remarkable. So, I mean, I'm not sort of blaming anyone for that. No. It's just a bad fit. If your body is saying to you, I don't like this, and you're going, okay, we'll have a day off, we'll do it tomorrow. That's not really a good answer,
really cut
is it?
No, and you can do it for so long. You could, like you said, you can sustain it for so long, and eventually it really starts to have very strong negative effects. And and I think it's one of the sure signs that change needs to happen in some shape or form, and it could be from a personal point of view. It doesn't necessarily have to be from a work perspective, depending on what people are struggling with or feeling stressed about. But if your body starts to break down and it just doesn't, and it gets harder and harder to push yourself through, that's a sure sign that the time is ready. You're ready to start thinking about, okay, what kind of change is going to feel good and sort this out.
Yeah, because I think for some people, like, it's imbalance that's the problem. Like, when they redress the balance, they start exercising and spending time with friends and eating good food and sleeping properly, they're okay again. Whereas for me, it was a bit deeper than that, because even when I made all of those adjustments on the final attempt, I still had this nagging feeling that I was in the wrong place and I wasn't the only one that knew that.
Yeah.
And that's not a nice feeling.
No. So now, by contrast, you kind of feel, how do you feel getting out? You can clearly get out of bed in the morning and feel good.
I can get out of bed very late in the morning.
Because you'll be up late gigging. Okay, yes.
So that's the other thing, is that the commercial world, or the corporate world, office life, does tend to favour the lark over the night owl. And there's some evidence that larks in general, people who naturally enjoy getting up early and going to bed early, tend to earn more. And I'm not bloody surprised, because the corporate day is, archetypally 8 till 6 or something.
Yeah.
It's not midday till midnight, which is where I like to do my work. But now, so now I can go to my own body's rhythm, which sounds a bit woo-woo, but it's really important, actually. I can also wear what I like, which again sounds trivial, but wearing that bloody awful. I mean, I must admit, you know when you're on a call with someone and you're supposed to look at them, but you look at yourself all the time? I've been doing that. I'm just going to cut my dreadlock off because it's irritating the life out of me.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's better. Right. This one's too long as well, let's be honest. Take that off as well.
See? And you can do this
and you can do your own hair. No,
well, your before and after photos, which will be shared as part of this, I just think are amazing. Like the difference, you just look like a different person.
Yeah, well, I don't have a lot of cosmetic work done at the same time, but that's in my set. People have to come and hear about that. But yeah, I think some of this peripheral stuff, like what you wear, what time you get up, whether you're inside or outside, what sort of conversation your job involves. So, for example, one of the things that struck me when I started this new job was people don't really talk about money. They're not really interested in money. And I just thought everyone was interested. I mean, I thought that's what everyone talked about all the time, because in my old job it was.
Yeah.
And if they weren't talking about money, they were alluding to how much money they got. You know, they were talking about cars or ski chalets or private schools or something that inherently involved having loads of money. And I've got nothing against people having loads of money. I'm all for it. But I do find it a bit narrow as a topic of conversation for your entire working life. And I had a friend actually who said she was Danish and she used to commute to Canary Wharf from Copenhagen once a week.
Oh, wow.
And I used to do the same, but from Gloucestershire, and her commute was shorter than mine.
Wow.
Because she'd fly into City Airport. And she said that in Copenhagen, her friends talk about how can we have more time? You know, what changes can we make to have more time? Where she said, I'm just flabbergasted by the UK because everybody wants more money. Even people that have quite patently got enough money.
So, yeah. Well, fascinating. So all in, you can wear what you want. You can have the kinds of conversations that you want. You can work to your own body's natural rhythm. You know, so it's the absolute ideal choice for you. All in.
From a lifestyle point of view, it really is. And I think, you know, the biggest one is I can make stuff because I'm creative. And I can show off. You know, I can share it, and because actually I'm a bit childish, and let's say childlike. It's a much more complimentary word. I'm a bit childlike, and I think we all are actually deep down. And to not have any sense of play. I mean, it was interesting when I did the course for the comedy. It was 6 weeks, 7 till 9 on a Wednesday, very close to where I worked. Of the 6 weeks, 2 weeks were a problem. And that was the first time I'd had a hobby in
She couldn't get to it because work
30
was,
years.
Yeah.
And even then, even after my kids had left home and all the rest of it, 2 hours a week was a problem.
Yeah.
And that, again, was quite shocking to me because I kind of thought, how can it be? How can I be so poor at managing my own time?
Yeah.
But of course, when you're part of a system, you're not really managing your own time. You're managing your own connections with a bigger beast.
Yeah. Bigger entity.
And you've got to make it work. So, yeah, I think having a lifestyle that suits your preferences, but more importantly, activities and goals that speak to something that matters to you.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a lot of people think, well, comedy's just a laugh, and it is. But good comedy and bad comedy are very different.
Absolutely.
So the more good comedy we have, the better our world is. And when the lockdown happened, we all found out how important art was.
Yes, we did.
All those people that go, art, it's just arty-farty, it's just people doing their own thing. Well, it's not. It's people creating stuff that we all consume. It's a business.
Yeah. So you get to indulge all of your very natural creative talents and abilities. And like you said, be childlike and play. So how can people find you? Because you are gigging all the time. You've got different things coming up. Like, how can people find out more about you and find tickets to, your various gigs?
I've got a website called 𝗧𝗛𝗜𝗦𝗦𝗢𝗙.com, and on there, one of the tabs is gigs. That's always got my next 30 days of gigs on. I do 3 or 4 a week, so I'm not exactly hard to track down. I'm all over the country, so most people, if they look at that, I will be near them soon.
Near them somewhere.
And if you put Samantha Daytime into Instagram this morning or this afternoon, you'll find all sorts of new stuff on there, including me getting a bird out of my house.
Brilliant. Right, SamanthaDaytime.com. I will put the link to your website and your Instagram and stuff in the show notes so people can find you. But listen, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a blast, and I just think you've come up with a whole bundle of useful advice and ideas and perspectives for people. So
good.
Thank you.
I'm very clever. I keep telling people, they just don't bloody listen.
Thank you for listening today, and I really hope that some of the insights that Samantha shared you found really helpful. I know when I first spoke to her and she told me about the concept of it's just humiliation, I genuinely thought it was genius, because often, when we're chasing big dreams and goals, it can feel frightening as hell and really, really difficult and uncomfortable, which stops us ever taking a step towards those things. Whereas just applying that lens of, it's just humiliation, I'm just going to have a go and I'm always going to try and entertain myself with it, just adds a little lightness and might just help you make that all-important step. Now, I think the other thing that Samantha talked about was the power of really disciplined baby steps. So, rather than thinking about the goal as this great big sort of nth degree thing, breaking it down to the smallest possible step that can really help, because it stops your brain fighting you on it. It prevents the resistance that we often feel. So if you can find this very smallest, easiest thing that you can do that just moves you incrementally forward, have a go at that. Because the more you do that, the more you build momentum. And before you know it, you're well on the way to, achieving whatever it is you're after. So thank you so much for listening today. If you have any questions at all, or, you have a perspective you'd like to share, please do get in touch. I would love to hear from you. And if you know anybody that you think would really benefit from listening to this podcast and Samantha's story, please do share the podcast link. So share the love. So until next time, take care, and just know this, I genuinely believe in your ability to go after and realize whatever it is you dream of. So go do your thing.
Thank you for listening today. I hope our time together has got you thinking about your own adventure in happiness. So please do get in touch. I'd love to hear more about your story. And why not join our Dream Chasers Unite community? There is nothing better than an adventure shared. Until next time, be brave and go create what you crave.